Yes, sir.
We'll take it in 5, 4, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. The time is now 3:01 p.m., and we will call to order, or I will call to order, the January regular meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections. With that, I invite all that are willing and able to rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Before we get started, I just think it's appropriate for us to acknowledge the passing of our 39th President of the United States, a native son of the state of Georgia and Georgia's former governor. I will note that being James Earl Carter Jr. As I watched the funeral service, I was struck by the consistency with which everyone that eulogized him spoke about his character and how he was so very principled in his service to this country and really to the world. As we look ahead to the 2025 election cycle and the work that our lawmakers have started just today, my sincere hope is that their work and that of this board will be carried out in a manner that is reminiscent of Jimmy Carter, that it be done so in a principled way, that it be done so with integrity and with voters, obviously for us, Cobb County voters, for our lawmakers, the voters of the state of Georgia, be centered in all that we do. And just a moment of silence in acknowledgement of his service to our state and our country. I appreciate your indulging me with that, and with that we will move on to the first item on our agenda, that being the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed amendments? I do. I don't recall during our email prep for the agenda who among us, but I believe that someone had proposed the removal of the board chair update from the agenda. I think that might have been you, Mr. Bruning.
No, I just said it could be part of.
Yeah, I don't, as I indicated, I don't recall.
I had just said it could be part of board member comments versus election office reports, but it doesn't need to change for this
Okay,
particular agenda.
I just want to make certain that we obviously acknowledge all input and ensure that it is updated. So if there's no amendment, proposed amendment to the agenda, we can go ahead and I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as provided.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the agenda for our meeting as proposed. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Next up is public comment. I note that there are 4 individuals that have signed up for virtual public comment. CP, are all 4 online?
We have 3 right now.
We have 3, okay. And there are 6 that are present here in the room with us. Is there a motion to amend the time allotted, or pardon, to set the time allotted for each public commenter?
I move with the small number of people of public, that I move that we approve 5 minutes for each public speaker due to the low number of people who signed up.
Okay. Is there, so it's been, the motion has been made to allot 5 minutes for each individual participating in public comment. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. It's been properly moved and seconded that the time allotted for each public commenter be set at 5 minutes. All of those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. With that, we will start here in the room. Mr. Leroy Emkin, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I received an email from Sally Grubbs, still the current chair of the Cobb GOP, and I asked Sally if this could be read, and she said it was okay with her to read a copy of this email that was sent to all members of the Board of Elections. So this is an email from Sally Grubbs to the members of the Board of Elections. Dear board members and Director Fall, I'm sure that by now you have seen the communique put out by the Cobb Democrats. While I know this came from Essence Johnson, there are quite a few downright lies in this email. Unfortunately, due to a death and funeral today at 2 o'clock, I will be unable to attend the board meeting today, and that's why Sally is not here today. I am looking to you to correct, this is to the board, I am looking to you to correct the inaccurate statements alleged in this email. That was the email sent to, an email from Essence Johnson. I am looking to you to correct the inaccurate statements alleged in this email. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Clearly, the information put out by the Cobb Democrats is done with the express purpose of supporting the new policy being put forth by Mrs. Mosbacher. I asked for a meeting which has been outlined as validated by Chairwoman Silas, with the former director, Janine Eveler, and with the prior Democrat Party chairman. I did not, quote, demand, unquote, a meeting. Director Fall has no issue with scheduling the meeting, and we had a date and time set which was abruptly canceled the day before the meeting was to take place. It wasn't until board member Mosbacher took issue with the meeting that it became an issue. At no time did I ask for nor expect, quote, special treatment, unquote. I do expect accurate, free, and fair elections, and also was looking for ensure we have good processes going forward with respect to poll watchers, coordinating in a positive way with the elections office in transparency is key. At no time did I allege any, quote, conspiracy theories, unquote. Given the proven issue of not mailing absentee ballots, equipment not being tested nor working, among other issues, there is a legitimate need for answers to processes that went awry during the November election. Cobb citizens need to be assured that proper processes are in place and that corrective action has been implemented due to the points of failure at the Cobb Board of Elections and registration. I did not make an accusation of illegal meeting. I asked because I was told that a, quote, majority of the board, unquote, did not want a meeting taking place. That indicated that there had been some sort of consensus and a decision to disallow director to have the meeting. It was communicated in my emails with Director Fall and with Chairwoman Silas that I had no issue with the chair of the Democrat Party being included in the meeting. At this time, I would ask that Director Fall and/or Chairwoman Silas correct the record publicly. I await your response. Sally Grubbs, Chairwoman, Cobb County Republican Party. And so I'm just entering this into the record. Who do I give this to?
You can give it to me, sir. We are, obviously, as you indicated, the email was sent to us, and we did receive the email.
Is that sufficient?
So that, I believe
Okay.
so. It's sufficient.
Okay, now just some additional comments on my part. One is, thank you, Board of Elections of Cobb County. I think you did an incredibly good job to assure that we have a new president and that we will be able to make America great again beginning January 20th, 2025. Thank you for your work. I also want to say that I noticed that Ms. Musbacher, again, during the Pledge of Allegiance,
5 minutes is up.
Yes, sir.
did not face the flag.
Thank you for that, Mr. Emkin. Online, do we have it? Perrin Chida? Chada?
She's not on.
Okay. We'll go on to the next person that's listed virtually, Donna Court. Ms. Court, are you with us?
Here.
Okay. I will say your voice is a bit muffled, so if you will speak up, please.
Is that better?
That is much better. You have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll keep mine short and sweet. Madam Chair and Election Board and Director Fall, my name is Donna Court, and I live in zip code 30068. I have to say thank you for a lovely, safe election season and for the steadfast and strong response of both Director Fall and our entire board in maintaining honesty, integrity, and just plain intelligence. And especially, I have to keep reminding how Director Fall took time from her busy schedule, along with other busy directors of many other counties, and went and represented us before the State Board of Elections, gave testimony. It was inspiring to hear. I want to encourage the board in any capacity that you can to work with our Board of Commissioners and Director Fall to continue to reach out via any social network, any communications. We want to maximize the voter turnout for the runoff elections that we have in the spring for District 2 and the primaries, if there's a runoff, and of course the special election, which will all take place in the spring season. And I think that everyone in this room, online and everywhere in the county, can agree that voter turnout is a good thing. It's a good thing because every voice must be heard. We all benefit when we are all represented. And last but not least, I want to give a personal shout out. I did work during the fall general election, and my post is Oregon 1 at Loving-Good Middle School, and District Manager Ava Motley is fabulous, and we have a wonderful crew that works the Loving-Good Middle School. And I just want to say thank you. It was a well-run ship, and our local manager was Martha, and all sorts of good people. And again, voter turnout is a good thing. It's a good thing, and every voice must be heard. So thank you all for all of your hard work, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the springtime.
Thank you, Ms. Court. Moving on to those in the room, Donald Barth.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
I'm very happy that you mentioned Jimmy Carter. We're going to talk about that in depth. Jimmy Carter was a man of integrity. Not so much in this room right here. Debbie, put your fingers in your ear. For 2 years, we've fought. You even said it in paragraph 4 that the Supreme Court had ruled that what you were doing, what was done, was unconstitutional. You pieces of work took an oath to follow the Constitution of Georgia. Not only did you not follow it, you went out of your way to violate the people in Cobb County's right. You went out of your way to violate your oath, how can you sit there and pretend that you have any kind of integrity, anything like Jimmy Carter? People come to me and they say, well, they're Democrats. They're not Democrats, they're demons. They do not follow the law, they do not follow their own oath. Being a part of a party does not make you right or wrong. Doing the wrong thing made you wrong. Now, it's written down that you totally and went out and in a biased way, you have cost Cobb County $1 million, $2 million. You should be paying for that. The taxpayers of Cobb County don't deserve to pay for your blatant errors. Errors and omissions come from qualified immunity. That says a reasonable person would know what is right and what is wrong. If we all followed the Constitution as the primary, could we do wrong? Policemen come up and say, I want your ID. Kiss my butt. Well, you can't say that. Yes, you can, unless there's reasonable suspicion you've done a crime. So what I'm telling you with that is the policeman gets forced to do something that he really doesn't want to by superiors or to protect his job. And now all of a sudden he's lost qualified immunity, but yet your hands are clean. You don't have clean hands. Lisa kept clean hands by putting it on y'all. 4 of you took a notion that you are superior to the Supreme Court of Georgia. 4 of you had taken an oath and said, we will follow it. Now, another thing, I would like to get on Tate Fall, I would like to get on the Director of Elections, not any one person in general. Wasn't it last month I emailed in and said, put me on the list? You sent back and said, I'm sorry, since we're not having a meeting here, I can't get you to speak. I'm going to tell you something, Board of Directors. This is the year 2025. Last year was 2024. We're talking about a month difference. None of you got the brains to make it where we can talk. I mean, I can go over to Public Works in the city of Marietta. They set up an iPad wherever they go. And we have a meeting, it's recorded, whatever. Was that part of conspiracy? Trust. You came in December 2023. The talk was about trust. There is no trust here. You came from an 80% Democratic background. You're showing it. You show it constantly. There's 2 parties in Cobb County, and we don't hate each other. We can go out and talk. We can do whatever. I'm one way today and the other way tomorrow. You cannot hide behind your party. You can't hide. What you did was unreasonable and unlawful. You're wrong. You were wrong yesterday, and you're going to be wrong some more. You don't act like you care.
Thank you, Mr. Barth. Your time has expired. Moving on to the next person on the virtual list is Sally Riddle. Ms. Riddle.
Sally Riddle, citizen of Cobb County. The first thing I just wanted to address is that I thank you for developing a policy for how the political parties should be in communication with Director Fall and her staff. I think having a policy that will lay a level playing field and make expectations known is a good idea. Secondly, regarding special election communications, this election is very confusing for a lot of the voters out there. We need increased communications over what the political parties and candidates themselves can provide. There's continued confusion over the districts due to the multiple legal cases. There's confusions around early voting, since this is a shorter early voting period for the February primary. There's been some confusion over the fact that it's non-traditional dates for an election and thus lack low awareness. The normal county communications and press outlets are not adequate to reach the majority of voters. That includes the county normal e-newsletters, the commissioner newsletters, as well as the county websites. We really need to do a lot of it, and we're asking actually for you to do a lot of additional outreach. I understand we do have a communications person now within the Board of Election staff. We can add handouts at the libraries, particularly those located in the 2 districts. If we can reach out to community partners, including the nonprofits such as the NAACP, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, League of Women Voters, but also the various religious communities, and provide them with materials to advertise this upcoming election and what the exact dates are, as well as urging people to check the My Voter page to see whether they're in one of the 2 districts involved in the election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Riddle. Next up, Christine Rosman.
Hello, Board. Christine Rosman. Couple of things is I do a lot of research. I'm not a detailed person, but I get the kind of big picture. And I do find, I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with the election. I'm just saying it was ironic that most states and counties that were swing states and counties, that a lot of them ended up going with Donald Trump. And I do find that it was interesting where the numbers were and who got elected here, including Connie Taylor, but that's another story. I would like to add to what Sally Riddle had to say, because she said, like, let's level the playing field. Let's make sure that, things are fair on both sides of the aisle. And I would just like to say that I did find it a little ironic, distracting, weird. And I guess the meeting, and I think it's the one that Donald Barth was referring to possibly, but it was a very well-attended meeting, and you toggled back and forth between speakers and people calling in. And after I spoke for 3 minutes, the gentleman that tried to call, you had on the first today, Dr. Perrin Cheda of Wellstar, that is the palliative care doctor and a specialist, and I think runs a palliative thing. He spent his entire 3 minutes dissing everything I said and basically saying, hey, you shouldn't listen to her. She doesn't make sense. Because I started off saying, gosh, I feel like I took a crazy pill. She is crazy. I mean, seriously, I felt that that was really inappropriate, that if another citizen is getting attacked verbally from another citizen, even if he's a doctor, it doesn't matter. There should be some, because it has been stopped here before. It's been stopped at Board of Commissioners. Everybody has their own opinion, but you don't target and put somebody down. And so you're welcome to apologize to me for not having stopped that, but I do recommend that if it happens again, that's really inappropriate. One of the things is that I was kind of laughing because I thought, he was basically mocking my conservative thinking, and I thought, hey, dude, half the people in Cobb County are Republican and half are Democrat, so I bet some of your patients might even be Republicans, and you probably shouldn't say that. So anyway, but I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossman. Next up is Shelley Northrup.
Can you
Ms.
hear me?
Northrup, are you with us?
I am, thank you.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. Hi, my name is Shelley Northrup, and I currently reside in Smyrna, Georgia. I want to first start by thanking the board for this fair and honest handling of the past election. We will not forget the professional manner in which the board handled unfounded challenges and misinformation that was designed to disrupt the election. I also want to thank the board for maintaining the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. voting hours, having 4 locations for advanced in-person voting, and for keeping Saturday and Sunday voting. This is very important for many people, including myself, who have jobs and obligations that make it necessary for these after-hour and weekend hours. I recommend increasing awareness of the upcoming changes to the upcoming election, including in District 2 and 3 boundaries and voting locations. I also would recommend increasing collaborating with community organizations to increase the awareness. I also want to put in my support for the new policy that requires an invitation to be extended to the leadership of both parties or their representatives. This will increase transparency and fairness across political parties. And finally, want to request a voter outreach plan. I want to say that a voter outreach plan is necessary for both the April Special County Commission election and for the Public Service Commission election later this year, which I understand. I think that's only going to be the only item on the ballot for unincorporated Cobb County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Northrup. Pamela Reardon.
Good afternoon, board. Good afternoon, Chairman and Fall, Mrs. Fall. Yeah, I've been through a lot. I've still got to go through some more, but I'm here, and I may have missed the debrief of the November election. I know that it looks on the outside that it was amazing, and everybody worked really hard, especially the volunteers that came in to do duplication, etc. But I mean, did we have a debrief? We did? Okay. Because I don't know if some of the procedures have been revamped. Like, why was there a large number of absentee ballots not mailed out by the deadline, etc.? Why was there a red line on the absentee ballots? And so causing us to have so many duplications. Where is the quality control? I mean, I don't know if you've implemented that since then, but that would be a suggestion. I'm glad that you did bring up our President Carter, because one of his big issues is elections, continuing at the Carter Center. He actually, the first time when he ran for a state senator in Georgia, he lost, but he didn't lose because he realized the ballot, they call it ballot box stuffing then, but that's what they did. So he took it to court, they rectified it, and he actually won that state position. So that's why he was so involved in elections. I don't know if I agree with everything that he did or thought, but I think that if he looked at our elections in Cobb County, he would have a big problem. He would have a big problem with the way this board tends to make up their own rules and not maybe follow the laws that we have in the state, bring so many lawsuits. We probably wasted $500,000 minimum this past election season, probably more. I don't know if you've gone after SOS to find out what's going on with Jarvis and why we have such a bad reporting in the system. But I think those are my main concerns, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Reardon. My understanding is that Dr. Perrin Cheta, is he on now?
Yes, I'm on.
Dr. Cheta?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, if you'll maybe speak up just a tad.
Yes, sorry, I'm here in the hospital. But so the reason why I wanted to get up and speak, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to hear some previous speakers, because I believe my name was just called out. And that person needs a little bit more education, because I never called out about somebody by name. I said I agree with her when she said that she was crazy. And I think today's comments reinforce that. Additionally, I think that Mr. Barth said that he feels one way sometimes, another way another times, and that bipolar nature of the Republican Party is still on display. It just seems as though there was so much hullabaloo about the 2020 election being stolen, and how now magically, when Donald Trump won in 2024, there wasn't that bad. And oh, how convenient for them that it's already, it was fraudulent 4 years ago, and this year it's not. And depending on who won. It's just really, really hard to take these people seriously. And I don't think you should take them seriously, because all they do is bring this nonsense to the meetings. They have something that they need to be ginned up about, something that they need to be angry about. And that's what we get to hear. When in actuality, you guys did, with the exception of getting those ballots out, that was a problem, those absentee ballots. But all in all, a very good job. And I just want to say that this country has gone into a very deep and dark place, because if you can sit there with a straight face and say that you're proud of this upcoming president, I have a question for you. Would you allow your daughter or your wife or any woman that's important to you be alone in a room with him? No, you probably would not. And if you do, well, I guess they're the same people that allowed P. Diddy to hang out with all those other people. So congratulations, America. We have now entered a deep, dark 4 years, of which we'll probably spend the next 50 to 100 digging out of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheta. Moving on to the next speaker, Sharon Marshall.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Marshall, and I have been a resident of Cobb County for 35 years. I am also the treasurer of the Cobb County Democratic Committee. I am speaking today on behalf of our executive board. Today, the Board of Elections will consider a new policy that will place guidelines on how the Cobb County Elections Director speaks with political parties, all political parties. This practice will create more transparency around our local elections process, and the Cobb County Democrats fully endorse it. If a meeting is requested by the leader of one party, should not all parties and their appointed representatives be present? The director of the Board of Elections plays a critical role in overseeing the election process, ensuring that it is fair, accurate, and free from external interference. Elections are also nonpartisan in how they are managed, how the votes are counted, verified, and certified. It is important to have open lines of communication with the director and party leadership. However, it is also important that those lines of communication be open towards all parties. There needs to be no air of bias or manipulation. Given this hyper-partisan political environment, it is absolutely necessary that all parties are represented in any private meeting with the Board of Elections to maintain the integrity and transparency of the electoral process. Including all parties fosters accountability, ensuring that each party can scrutinize decisions, ask questions, and ensure that the electoral system is being run impartially. This helps ensure that policies are not only balanced but also account for the concerns of various political viewpoints. If only certain parties are consulted, then opposition may feel their rights are being undermined. This could lead to disputes and legal challenges, which could damage the legitimacy of the election results. A post-election after meeting is an outstanding proposal, and the Cobb County Dems fully support its recommendation. All parties should be privy to how well or not so well the prior election was administered. Having each party at this meeting allows open dialogue and engenders trust in the electoral system. And we all know that trust is crucial for voter participation. I would like to commend Director Fall and the board for navigating a very stressful election cycle. From the top of the ticket to the bottom, there were changes being made throughout the year. Despite a few hiccups, our elections were smooth and orderly. I am looking forward to working with all of you throughout 2025, as are all members of the Cobb Dems Executive Board. We appreciate your hard work and dedication to our community and our democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. The final speaker is Mr. Mike Benz.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing input and comment. My name's Mike Benz. I'm a 20-year-plus resident of Cobb County. Wanted to pick up on something that Sally Riddle had mentioned, again, about just communications and how the, if you want to call it the old school communications with newsletters and postcards and things like that are necessary but not sufficient. For lack of a better term, perhaps some sort of like interorganizational digital network. I don't know how else to call it, but where at a moment's notice, people can be notified in organizations, and that can kind of go downstream so that people find out when changes are made, perhaps even in the middle of an election cycle. Also want to take the opportunity to thank, again, volunteers who participated in the 2024 elections, temporary office staff, poll workers who took time out of their lives to train, and their flexibility for filling in whenever they were needed, and also to the volunteers who worked as poll watchers, ballot review teams, and ballot duplication teams, often under less than ideal circumstances. So I'd like to recognize some persons who actually participated, just to recognize them and give them some public notice. That would be Faith Arkell, Erica Bailey, Jennifer Barber, Diana Bishop, Susan Cannell, Marianne Clark, Barbara Coley, Joel Cope, Todd Crowder, Lisa Decker, Georgette Dobkin, Patty Folio, Beth Hendrickson, Carlton Henry, Audrey Herndon, Libby Hickson, Brian Jory, Harvey Kaufman, Sean Keegan, Teresa Coster, Eileen Lichtenfeld, Kelly Littleton, Amy Markowitz, Joanne Max, Tracy O'Connor, Arnell Farr, Nancy Prager, Sandra Robertson, Amanda Robinson, Bob Scott, Linda Spear, Sherry Strickland, David Studeman, Dick Trumbull, Allison Tweed Perry, Patrick Umstead, Deborah Von Gonten, Gail Von Gonten, Doug Weber, Lee Weinberg, Debbie Winowski, Andrew Zeldin, and Elaine Zittimer. Thank you to those volunteers for helping make the election possible and to work as smoothly as it did. I would also just like to express my admiration for the board. It was a very difficult election cycle. There were changes that were made. There were things out of our control, out of your control. But we appreciate everything that you did. I'd also like to bring up the issue of trust. That's come up a couple of times. Certainly we want to have trust in our board and in our elected officials. It's also important for elected officials and every human to to trust themselves. And so I'd like to say, especially for Jennifer Mossbacher, I'd like to thank you. And this is just a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, that self-trust is the essence of heroism. It's the state of the soul at war, and its ultimate objects are the last defiance of falsehood and wrong, and the power to bear all that can be inflicted by evil agents. It speaks the truth, and it is just, generous, hospitable, temperate, scornful of petty calculations, and scornful of being scorned. It persists. It is of an undaunted boldness and of a fortitude not to be worn out. Heroism works in contradiction to the voice of mankind, and in contradiction for a time to the voice of the great and the good. Heroism is in obedience to a secret impulse of an individual's character. Now, to no other man or woman can its wisdom appear as it does to him or her, for every man or woman must be supposed to see a little farther on his own proper path than anyone else. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bend. That concludes the public comment portion of today's meeting. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of our meeting minutes from our December the 9th regular called meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting agenda, the meeting minutes? Does anyone have any proposed revisions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as provided.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes from our December the 9th, 2024 regular called meeting. All of those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing. Director Fall, we'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you. We'll get the map pulled up for the polling place relocation. This is for Oregon 02, which, as the board recalls, we had to temporarily relocate prior to the November election due to the sale of the building in which we previously used. Previously, we were at Worship with Wonders Church, and then upon the sale of their building, we had to find a new location last minute where Cobb County Schools graciously allowed us to use Smith and Middle School, as schools were closed that day, and we're really grateful for that. And that led us to our new location, which is across the street from Smith and Middle School, Gathering of Champions Church. You can see on the map there, it's directly across the street of Powder Springs Road from Smith and Middle School. It's a great location, really nice, large parking lot, nice and flat, and our partners there are really excited to have us. And so we are presenting the permanent move from the temporary location of Smith and Middle School at 2025 Powder Springs Road to permanently relocate to Gathering of Champions Church International at 1994 Powder Springs Road, effective January 14th, 2025.
Thank you, Director Fall. Noting that this is a public hearing portion of the meeting, we are permitted to have public comment limited to this topic only. And then obviously, if there are members of the board that have any questions or comments with respect to the proposed relocation of Oregon 02. So at this time, I will call for any public comment related to this item only, that being the permanent relocation of Oregon 02 to Gathering of Champions Church located at 1994 Powder Springs Road in Marietta, Georgia. Hearing nothing, are there any comments or questions from the board? No. I do have a couple of quick points. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Director Fall, for the format. I know we've been talking about having a specific format for these types of changes to polling locations. And I note that this particular polling location is on the boundary. Not necessarily in, not necessarily out, but it appears to be, at least from the map, on the boundary. The only thing I would ask, like in the future, if it's outside of the boundary, you'll include that in your template.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, given the fact that this is in District 4, obviously it will be implicated, or this will be the polling location for this special election. Per usual, if you and the team will leverage newsletters in District 4, obviously, with the current commissioner, perhaps the chairwoman's newsletter, and all other outlets that we can to ensure that our voters that are assigned to this polling location know that it has changed.
Absolutely.
Okay. Unless there is anything further, call for a motion to approve the proposed polling location change of Oregon 02, permanent polling location change of Oregon 02 to be located at the Gathering of Champions Church, again at 1994 Powder Springs Road in Marietta, Georgia.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the permanent location change to, of Oregon 02 to Gathering of Champions Church. All of those in favor? Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the policy statement on meetings with political party chairs and representatives. I believe I'll turn it over to you at this time, Director Mosbacher. Director, I'm sorry. Ms. Mosbacher.
I think we've all had this now. If there's any comments or, I mean, this was just sort of in response to trying to put something in place. Sorry, I have a cold, by the way.
No, sorry to hear that.
If, this was really just in response to try to put something in place so that Tate had guidance, Director Fall had guidance regarding if a party, political party chair in Cobb asks for a meeting, that she has sort of a protocol to follow, or anybody in her position, and how we would move forward with that. That's sort of what this was in response to, so that there was, you know, just transparency between both parties, and that there was a policy that could be followed easily. So
Okay.
that's the response.
Sure.
I'm open to discussion or whatever.
Of course. I mean, I've got some proposed revisions that I'm happy to share, opening it up for discussion at this time.
I do have a couple of comments. I'm overall not in agreement with this. Having participated in past follow-up meetings after elections with Director Evler, there's nothing nefarious about the party chair and appointees to election issues meeting with the director. In the past, they've always been to discuss the issues that poll watchers had noticed or seen during the election. It wasn't to get anyone in trouble. It was actually to try to improve the process. I also would like to bring up that the GOP chair, Sally Grubbs, did not have a problem inviting the chair of the Democrat Party. And I want to make that clear. I believe she stated that in the back and forth emails. I also would like to bring up that item number 4, publicly available information. Report and documentation shared during such meetings shall be limited to materials that are publicly available. That limits the real intended purpose of the party chair asking to meet with Director Fall, which was to go over poll watcher reports. Those are not publicly available documents. I would like to ask that that be stricken from this policy. I also would like to point out that you're opening a can of worms here in limiting the exposure of the director to either party. Does that also fall true for phone calls? Just curious. Do we have to get both parties on the phone? I don't know. I think we're opening a can of worms. I am all about the First Amendment rights of redress for our government officials, and I think this is limiting First Amendment rights. If Director Tate wanted to share what happened in the meeting, I'm sure that would be fine with the GOP chair. I'm not speaking on her behalf. I'm giving my opinion that I cannot support this policy.
Is there anything further from the balance of the board? Okay. I'm happy to provide either the red line document or, for that matter, just talk through the proposed revisions. What do you prefer, Ms. Mosbacher?
I'm fine if we want to go through the red line another time, if this is not something that people want to take up today. I don't,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just
And
trying to address it.
I apologize for
I feel like
interrupting.
we should have had that. If you had a bunch of red lines, I guess we could have done that over email, but before we presented this one?
I don't have a bunch of red lines. I have some red lines. It's a one-pager. So,
Okay,
for example, Section 1 speaks to inclusive participation, but it's referring to a meeting requested by leadership. Presumably, that same inclusive participation would be applicable to Section 2. So, for example, Roman numeral 1, my suggestion would be that it be, this section reference be meetings requested by party leadership. In addition to that, I was curious about the rationale for limiting participation to the party's representatives, as opposed to, we understand that initially myself and I'm giving everybody different jobs today. Director Fall were to meet based upon her offering. Director Fall offered a meeting based upon Ms. Grubb's request. And so I guess I want to understand the rationale for excluding a board chair, whether it's me or anyone else. In as much that I'm only in this position for another 6 months, to my knowledge.
It seemed logical to me if it was party meeting, that it would be the party representatives on the board that would be involved. But that was just logical to me.
Okay. Okay. The other question is, how are we defining recognize? So to the extent that there is a independent that perhaps it was on the ballot for an election, how then would we, if they had concerns, how then would we address any concerns that they may have had? If it's as it relates to an after-action meeting?
They would be invited.
Okay.
That's how I would interpret that.
Well, and that's the only reason I'm
Yeah.
suggesting some additional
Sure.
revisions. I'm not tearing it apart. I'm just suggesting that there might be an opportunity to expand it a little bit, such that it's not necessarily in response to this particular request, but that it could perhaps govern in any particular situation.
And that makes sense. I didn't exactly know how to phrase that, but certainly there are other parties that may want to participate in that type of meeting.
Right. And then with respect to Section 3C as in cat, questions or discussions related to human resources matters are prohibited. It might be, and this is a tenet of just kind of construction, like drafting, questions or discussions shall be limited to election administration only, as opposed to saying what's not to be included, noting what is to be included might, again, limit the ability for going back and forth, because then you'd have to potentially list out everything that would be prohibited, as opposed to what it will be limited to. So it's just those types of.
Yeah, well, and that's friendlier.
Yeah, that's true, and it's an occupational hazard. Just as an attorney, I just read things, I believe, differently, and so that's one of the reasons why I had a couple of revisions. And I'll be honest,
sometimes I didn't want there to be personal attacks against employees.
Well, personal attacks abound as of late, right here in this very meeting. So,
right. I just feel like that's not something that the parties would have authority over in terms of governing a disciplinary action or those kind of
right,
things.
no, they wouldn't, and to be quite honest, neither do we.
Right, exactly.
So at any rate, those are just the types of revisions. I will send you the red line. I'll be honest, I redlined it this morning, so.
Cool. And I did not hear from Daniel.
Daniel, anything that I've suggested that you find objectionable?
No,
Okay.
Being on the political party, yeah, thank you. We were noting on the political party issue that there's a statutory definition about, there's recognized political parties within the code, and then there's political organizations, I think, or I can't remember the other term they use for sort of the ones that aren't, always on the ballot.
Right.
And so we could clean it up with that. This had come off last time. I didn't know if it was going to be picked up at this meeting or the bylaws meeting, or like how the board wanted to handle it. I'm happy to look at. I don't see any legal problems with it,
right.
And so I wouldn't really ask any legal questions. But if to the extent you want to help help cleaning it up, I'm happy to do that. And every suggestion that Tori made is fine. I see no problems with any of them.
Okay, excellent. If you could clean it up, I will, obviously you'll be copied on the email when I send it to everyone on the board. And then I don't know how we'll address the proposed striking of section 4A. I will note that I had noted here, how do you account for information which is available per an open records request to the extent that is not publicly available, but it obviously is something that could be discussed at the meeting.
Right.
So again, it was just really a matter of trying to be certain that we're drafting not for a situation, but generally, more generally.
And on that issue, I think if I understand what Ms. Mossbacher may have been trying to get to, is probably twofold, is that the things that are shared by the board and the department have to be things that are available under the open records.
Right.
Conversely, it probably ought to be noted that anything that the parties share that becomes a public record.
Right.
So that both of those things probably need to be noted.
Yeah, so yeah, if you could make all of those revisions and any
Okay.
others to the extent that you believe it's appropriate for the application of this, just generally, that would be great.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
you prompted a couple of things that apparently I overlooked, and that is Section 3C. Prohibiting the discussion of any human resource matter. I just want to reflect back on 2022, where both parties had serious issues with an employee. And it was a topic that was a very important topic in the recap, to go through all the different things that were noticed with Director Evler. And so prohibiting that discussion by a party chair when there's a serious concern, again, I get back to that old First Amendment, nasty First Amendment right. And so I suggest that that be reworded. Maybe it is only related to specific issues that are not in line with policy and state law, but to completely prohibit it. Just one more reason to vote no.
Right. No, I understand, and perhaps there's some middle ground, if you will, because I'd struck that language as well, looking at it more from the perspective of, limiting it versus going line by line and saying the items that were prohibited as a part of discussion. Let's say what is to be discussed. So,
Yeah, and just for the record, and I realize it would constitute a quorum, but since we're calling a special meeting where everybody gets to come, I would like the chair to be there. I would be happy to give up my seat for the chair to hear the two parties and whatever they present. So.
understood. Okay.
Just say.
Mr. White, you've heard all of the proposed revisions. Obviously, as I noted, I will share with you my red line draft, as I will share with everyone on the board, and we'll go from there. Okay. Unless there's anything further on this particular item. Moving on to the next item is new business, a schedule for publication of Board of Election and registration meeting materials. And so I did request that this item be placed on the agenda. There have been various comments and discussion that have been had with regard to the timeliness or lack thereof in us posting items to the website for public viewing prior to our meetings. And I note that Director Fall, when you and the team were preparing the meeting schedule for 2025, there were certain dates that were noted, and I believe that they were carryovers. We don't meet those dates. Those dates that time frame is 10 days prior to our meeting. And so to the extent that anyone is relying upon those dates, one, if we're not meeting them, it does not make sense, in my opinion, to continue to publish them, because we are setting expectations that we're not meeting. I did note that on the page of the website where you sign up for public comment, that public comment sign-up is to be available 3 days prior, together with the agenda. So I believe, and Mr. Bruning, I know you previously requested to have the agenda a particular number of days prior to. So do you have any suggestions with respect to it? Again, so we can all manage our expectations and informs the timing within which we're doing our work, and then obviously puts the public on notice when this information will be available.
I think I would suggest setting a deadline 1 week before the meeting.
Okay, for publication.
For publication, so that the public has a chance to review the information, review the intent, so that all board members have the information in time to digest it and come to the meeting prepared. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? And this is publication of everything, so the meeting minutes and the agenda. Okay.
I was going to say, I think, and I think I said this in an email, but I think somebody needs to actually just like lay it out in a calendar format so we have something to discuss. Like right now, I feel like we're just kind of like throwing some things around, but you know, it needs to be laid out like, okay, the meeting happened, when are the minutes sent to, you know, the admin staff? When are the minutes returned? How the board reviews them? Like it should be done in a calendar format. I feel like we can discuss it here, but it should be laid out for us as something to review.
Right, and I guess there are 2 steps there. There's the internal workings of the board together with the staff with respect to when our secretary and Ms. Von Felt will coordinate things. And then there's also the public-facing piece of this, which is the one that I brought up, to manage expectations of when we are going to publish materials. But if you want to defer all of that to one conversation, I guess I didn't envision that the fact that Ms. Von Felt and Ms. Effred would confer, and 3 days after the board meeting, there'd be an agreement that, you know, Ms. Von Felt would provide a draft to you, or you would provide a draft to Ms. Von Felt. To me, that's kind of internal administrative matters. I was speaking more so to the publication of the materials, to the extent that at times, members of the public have indicated that they, you know, where is it? Sometimes it gets posted the day of, so.
Right, but if, I'm just saying, we can't post the material, like, we have to back it up and look at it and say, okay, if we're posting the materials, what is the process by which the materials get edited to the point that they're ready for being posted?
I don't disagree with that. I was just trying to come up with a date that then you back up from, and wanted, to the extent that it implicated the public, having that in a public discussion in a public forum. But I'm happy, but
the first date being when the agenda goes, is that the date, that's the date you're looking at, the end date being where the agenda?
when it's publication to the website. So to Mr. Bruning's suggestion, he said 1 week prior to the meeting. Therefore, we would have been required to publish the agenda and the meeting minutes. That's why I also confirmed that he wasn't just speaking about the meeting minutes or the agenda, but also the meeting minutes, such that they would then be published on, they would have been published on the 6th. And then based upon that 7-day period, perhaps we give a mulligan if that 7th day, you know, prior is a holiday, then I would leave it to Ms. Von Felt and Ms. Efrat as to how they work that together. That, yeah, I wasn't getting into the mixing of the sauce.
Like the whole agenda packet too? Because like sometimes we've put up the agenda, but not the whole packet.
Hence the reason why I inquired with Mr. Bruning as to when he made his suggestion, whether he was referring to the agenda or the agenda and the minutes. And Mr. Bruning, I believe you said you were referring to both, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But the packet is more than just the minutes sometimes, right? Like it's everything that went into this.
Right, hence, we can then inquire with Ms. Fall as to whether that would be something that works for her as well, recognizing that we also have the opportunity to amend the agenda, no different than we did during the December meeting.
I think we're mincing words here,
I believe we are.
and I'm not sure why this is a controversial topic, but if documents for the packet, the agenda packet, have already been acted on, so it shouldn't be a big lift to have that attached to the meeting minutes when it's posted. And while we're talking about posting, perhaps any policy recommendation or anything that is coming before the board also have to be posted with that agenda.
Well, that's the packet.
Prior to, yeah, well, we have frequently approved stuff the day it was presented for the first time, so maybe that also needs to be attached to the agenda and to an agenda packet. So I just think we're mincing a lot of words here. Not sure why this is a controversial thing. Oftentimes, we haven't even posted the agenda until the day of the meeting.
Right. That's the reason why it
And
was
there's
brought up.
been at least twice, I believe, that we never posted the link for virtual until the day of. So I'm all for this, and I'd like to move that we, we act on this. I'm okay with the week notice, and thank you for acknowledging that the agenda and the agenda packet should be posted.
There's a motion on the floor as provided by Ms. Fisher that that timeframe be set for publication of meeting materials, that being the agenda packet and meeting minutes, be set for 7 days prior to the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. It's been moved and properly seconded to adopt a 7-day period prior to the meeting for the posting of all meeting materials. All of those in favor?
Is there a discussion first?
Oh, I apologize.
Because I feel like we haven't heard from Director Fall at all about is that realistic? Or, I just, in terms of like getting all the materials out there and what's been done previously and.
Sure, I think moving to civic clerk will help us achieve that type of timeline because it's a lot more streamlined. And I think what we can do is just whatever we have at that stage. I know sometimes there's a lot of discussion if someone's out of town, they may be lapse in the email or whatever the case is. We can just always publish what is available at 7 days. And then if we need to add things or amend the agenda when y'all come to the meeting, you can do that. But I think as long as I have what we need, if it is like a policy proposal, that obviously comes from y'all. As long as I have that, I can make sure we have anything that comes from us, like a polling place relocation. Those are easy to do when we get out, as long as it's not an emergency relocation. We could get that done. And I think civic clerk will help with that, like I said.
Do you find this burdensome on either you or the staff?
I think as long as we're timely and responding to agendas and what feedback is, I think we can make it happen.
Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll call a question. All of those in favor of the 7-day period? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, the election office reports and updates. Director Fall?
Thank you. I just have a few slides to go over, as this will be a quick update. I just wanted to give everyone an overview of what we're doing to prepare for the February 11th special primary, and then just a few other notes. So quick reports from each division. So for absentee and absentee by mail, we completed logic and accuracy testing this morning. For those of you who haven't attended logic and accuracy testing, that's the first step in testing our voting equipment. So we do that prior to every single election, where we run a test deck through all of our equipment, and we make sure that how we use a ballot marking device is how it's printing is how it's scanning is how it's being tabulated. So absentee by mail completed their portion this morning with their printed test deck. Since we printed this in-house, we were sure to check for, I know it was referred to in the public comment earlier as the red line issue, although that wasn't the issue with the ballots. It just was an indicator that the timing marks were printed off, because the timing marks got off in the reset of the printers when the license was re-upped. So all of that's been tested in-house, and everything came back great. So all the ABM ICC is ready to go. Ballots will begin going out on the 21st in accordance with OCGA 21-2-384-2 for special elections. As of about 1 o'clock today, we have received 12 absentee by mail applications for regular voters and 1 UOCAVA absentee by mail application. And so although we're working on improving the absentee by mail system, and we have a new system that we're trying in terms of how we process those applications to try to streamline what the issues that caused us to get behind are. 13 applications is not a high volume, and so the staff is aware that this isn't a true test in terms of a high volume, but they're able to identify different issues that could come up with the workflow. And so we're grateful to have this opportunity to try something new out. AIP training will begin, it'll be this Friday and Saturday. It was supposed to be this past Friday and Saturday, but was postponed a week due to the weather. And then we'll start AIP on the 1st. The elections division, their training will start on the 21st and run through February 1st, so a packed 2 weeks there. We have a target poll worker number of 651, and as of this morning, we've hired 562, so well on our way there. For prep, they also began their portion of LNA this morning at 9 a.m., and they will continue each day at 9 a.m. until completion. We're estimating sometime between 5 and 7 days. Just a smaller election for us, so I wanted to give a little bit of a buffer there. For voter registration, the deadline for voter registration for the February 11th special primary is today. And so all of those registrations need to be received by 11:59 p.m. if they're using the portal or via email. And our office does close at 5 p.m. So if you need to come in person, that's the deadline, 5 p.m. Registration had to key over 20,000 applications between the close of the last election and this election. So anyone who sent in updates after the voter registration deadline in November up until today. So they've done a ton of keying and have done a great job staying on top of all of the tiles and the portals and the dashboards. So they've done a really great job. Now that Oregon 02's relocation has been approved, we'll place the order for precinct cards first thing tomorrow morning. So these will be the new cards that will go out to the entire county for redistricting. So everyone will have a brand new precinct card with all of their districts listed on there, as well as their polling place. And so we had to wait until the approval of Oregon 02 as to avoid them getting a card with the old location on there, because we can't change anything in Jarvis, of course, until the board votes to approve it. And then just a few other updates that we're working on. So we are working with the county attorney on contracts for the upcoming municipal elections. Due to legislation that was passed last year, it's kind of changed a little bit, more formalized how we do contracts with the municipalities. So working with the county attorney on that. And we'll be engaging in those soon. And then tomorrow, the Board of Commissioners will vote on the qualifying fee for the surveyor. So the surveyor was last year, but no one qualified for that. We had a gentleman that was in that position for a long time, and then he decided to, I guess, hang up the hat and no longer serve in that position. And so we will host that with our next general election that's countywide, which will be this November because of the PSC election. So we have to post in the legal organ the qualifying fees prior to February 1st. So that's why the BOC will vote on that tomorrow. Right now it's at $15, as typically you do a 3% qualifying fee, but surveyor is an unpaid position. So we just set it at $15. You can't go over $35. So we'll be posting that in the MDJ once the BOC approves. And then I also wanted to touch on implementation of a few new laws and what we're doing to make sure we're in compliance with some new things that were effective January 1st. So first is 21.2.217, which is the new rules for determining residence. The specific part that's new is for anyone who is unhoused and doesn't have a permanent fixed address, and that their mailing address has to be the County Board of Elections address. So that's been a longstanding practice of our office. I know that that was the practice when they were at Whitlock. So when they moved over to Whitlock, they moved all of those voters to 995. And so currently we only have 4 unhoused voters that are registered with their mailing address at 995 Roswell Street. And so we will continue to follow, this practice that's now set forward in law, that's been practiced in our office, that anyone who does not have a permanent fixed address and is unhoused, that mailing address will be our office. 21.2.283.1B is a new ballot-proof check and review process. So this is a new process that was added that allows candidates that are on the ballot 24 hours to review those ballots to ensure that their name is spelled correctly, party affiliation is correct, incumbency status correct. And so we did that. So as soon as we finished proofing the ballots internally last week, sent them to the candidates, courtesy copied the party chairs, gave them 24 hours to check, came back with no edits, so that's always great. And so we approved the project last week, and that's why we were able to start LNA this morning. And then last is 21.2.493J2.21. This was a new portion of a law that was added in that says that anyone after January 1st, 2025 can request ballot images at 600 dots per inch or 600 DPI. The current scanners that we use, both the ICCs and the ICP, scan at 200 DPI, so far below 600 DPI. We did receive an open records request shortly after the first requesting this for the 2020 ballot images. We do still have the 2020 ballot images, even though it's past retention due to local litigation, and it's not statewide, but local here to Cobb. And so those could have been destroyed in 22 if we didn't have that. So upon trying to investigate how to come up with a cost estimate for this and how we could scan 396,000 ballots at 600 DPI, what equipment would we need to purchase, began talking with ITS, and our copiers can be set to 600 DPI to scan them in. But what's difficult is that in order to scan in a 600 DPI 18-inch ballot takes up a lot of space. They were talking about one ballot taking up, I believe it was 2 megabytes of space, which would cause a long time to transmit. So when we scan something in on our scanner, it goes into our cloud server, and then that's what either emails it to you, which this would be too large, or it goes into a cloud where you can log in and retrieve that. So what we would have to do likely is have the county ITS set us up our own server where it would be larger. And so originally we were looking at spending about 2 hours a day scanning these ballots because we can't interrupt the daily operations of our office. And we have several elections coming up. In order to do that, based on my calculations, it would take us approximately 35 and a half weeks to scan these ballots due to the time constraints and the size constraints of the server. So we're moving forward with ITS to see how we can be in compliance with this law, but it is going to be quite a big lift between us and ITS to figure out how we could scan 396,000 ballots or more at that high of a resolution. And so that's what we're working with through ITS, had them come by today, and we'll continue to meet with them to come up with a resolution. And that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Fall? Ms. Fisher?
Can you go back a slide or two? Under registration, had to key 20,000 applications. So what you're saying is after the application deadline in the last election, you have since then received 20,000 applications?
Yes, it's not necessarily new applications, it's just updates, keying 20,000 update applications. That could be a change of address, new registrant, out of, different county transfer, online voter registration, but it's approximately 20,000 total.
And how far along are we on that? Because as I recall, our problem with getting out the ballots was due to keying in registration, so.
Keying in absentee by mail applications, not keying registrations. It had
Okay.
nothing, the registration numbers don't affect the absentee by mail application
Okay.
processing.
So, we're done with those 20,000?
We're keying through the backlog. I think we have one last tile to key. The being closed Friday, we were planning on working Friday and Saturday. The county was closed, so we expect to get that done today or tomorrow. But we are in the last home stretch.
And then one other question. On the precinct cards, sending them out to everyone in the county, again, didn't we just send out new precinct cards after we finally updated the commission districts?
No, this would be sending them out for the redistricting. So
nobody's received the new
Correct.
card? Okay.
Correct. We wanted to wait till we had all of our precincts finalized. That way no one got confusing or conflicting information.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brody?
I have a question on the 600 DPI. How are other counties handling this? I mean, that's a huge amount of time and a huge amount of effort. And is anybody going back to the legislature and say, come on, guys, do you really need this? Or how about some funds to pay for it?
And if I could include a friendly amendment, any guidance from the Secretary of State on this?
Sure. So the only ORR that most counties have received is in regards to 2020, And so most counties don't have those ballots any longer. So when I inquired with the other large metros, particularly Gwinnett, I spoke with their director at length about the issue. They had already set the destruction date for the ballots, and so they were destroyed by the time that they got the ORR. So they've been able to give the no records responsive request response. And we have not received guidance from the Secretary of State outside of, there was a buzz post that I believe that there maybe were some counties that the ICCs we have, the high-speed scanners, they have the capability to scan at 600 DPI. It's a setting you have to change. However, I guess some counties went in and changed that setting, and then that decertifies the equipment, because we cannot alter any type of setting on equipment that has been set by the Secretary of State. So they did put out a buzz post saying that if you had done that, that equipment was no longer certified. We did not do that. And so we were looking at our own copiers, like I mentioned, internally. But that's the only related guidance, if you may call it that, we've received.
I can chime in. I have talked with some other counties that are subject. There's a handful of counties that do still have litigation holds in place, like Cobb, for people that wanted access to the 2020 ballots. And so I know I've talked with Forsyth and a couple other counties. Actually, some of the counties we've talked to are smaller, and so they don't have quite, they don't have close to 400,000 ballots to worry about, but they still have thousands and thousands of ballots that they're going to, and they're estimating. What everybody's done is they've tried to do a sample run to say, like, well, this is taking us 30 seconds per ballot to upload, or it's taking us some are longer, some are shorter, and with open records requests like this, you still tell the the person requesting the records, like, it's going to take this long and it's going to cost this much, because you're allowed to charge them for the lowest level employee that's necessary to do this work and the number of hours. So it ends up in the thousands of dollars, and if folks are okay waiting 30 weeks and paying thousands and thousands of dollars, then there's not much way around it. But this is what happens when people lobby the legislature, and the legislature rubber stamps it without really looking into, well, what does that actually cost, or what does it take, or what does that mean when someone asks for a 600 DPI? They don't look into it. They just assume that whoever's telling them that's the standard that they should use. And so it's not just Cobb. There's other counties that I've communicated, and I can't go into too much detail because it's attorney-client stuff, or at least it's under a joint defense agreement, so I can't talk about details. But I can tell you other counties are doing similar things in terms of trying to determine their costs and their estimate. But these are, when you mentioned that about costs, the cost would be if we had to get new equipment or hire vendors, to assist with it. But we're allowed to use the equipment that we have. That's all Director Fall. You can use the equipment you have, and it's not allowed to interrupt normal operations, and you're allowed to pass on the costs under the Open Records Act. So that's all being done, but it's just not going to be as simple a task as whoever sold it to the legislator.
So are we proceeding? We're waiting for somebody to ask.
So we did get the open records request, so I responded with the cost estimate, as Mr. White explained. So right now, the cost estimate, we did do a time test to see how long it would scan, how long it would take to scan. The uploading has been a bit of a wrench, so that would obviously cause a further delay, but the physical scanning of the ballots, we could get done in 35 and a half weeks at 2 hours a day, working 5 days a week. And the cost provided with the 35 and a half weeks for the pickup delivery of those ballots from our secure facility to our office, including that, was just under $14,000.
So has the requestor authorized that?
He has until the end of the day tomorrow, was the deadline I proposed to him, to let us know by end of day tomorrow if he would like us to proceed.
Great, thank you.
And following up on that, there's a provision or language here that allows the person making the request pursuant to the subsection to observe the scanning related, the handling. We can't necessarily outsource it because only authorized election officials can touch or handle the ballot. So he will advise us as to whether he wants to avail himself of this right. And then I presume the printers are, the copiers, where they're situated in the office would allow for this if he availed himself of that right?
We'd have to move the copier to an area that's publicly accessible, as all of our copiers are behind badge access for obvious reasons.
Right, that's why I wanted,
But
that's why I'm
yes,
raising.
We'd have to move it,
Okay.
yes. And he did in his open records request the ability to be present at the scanning as the law outlines. And as you said, it does say an election official to handle the ballots, which of course that was IT's first suggestion, was I hire a company to do it. But I would love to do that, but I cannot do that.
Okay. And so this is, I presume, not necessarily an interim solution, but I know you said you were having conversations with our IT organization with respect to setting up a different, cloud server and what have you. If this gentleman moves forward with this request, obviously we'll handle it this way. But as it relates to kind of how the process and the procedures and equipment we put in place on a go-forward basis to handle this, if you'll just let us know to the extent that there are additional costs associated with it, above and beyond that we can pass on to the requester so that we understand the implications on spending by the office, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. I do have a question. I know in December you and I exchanged a couple of messages about the vendor selection for precinct cards, and I think you all were planning to do a vendor selection process. Has that taken place?
So due to the timeline because of the holidays and the delay that it caused the vendors to get their quotes back and the amount it costs to mail out a countywide mailer, we're not able to use a third-party vendor with the countywide mailers. So we'll use the third-party mailer for our moving forward our precinct cards because we can tailor them to have special messages or things like that. So we'll be using the state's vendor for this countywide mailer, this first one. It's the most cost-efficient option for us. The quotes that came back from the third parties on a countywide mailer were quite high in comparison. And so we'll be working with No Ink, the state's vendor, to get these out.
Okay. Go ahead. Back to No Ink, I know we've had our own concerns and considerations. If you'll just speak briefly to the process for confirming that the information is accurate.
Absolutely. So I also passed along those concerns to the vendor and discussed those concerns that we had and why I didn't want to use them as a vendor.
Right.
And they were receptive to that. And so I spoke with Ms. Miller, our registration division manager, today about this and said, pending the board's approval of the Oregon 02 move, her supervisors were watching, so they knew as soon as you guys took the vote, they could make that move in MVP, and then they could go ahead and start double, triple checking. I said 3 different people will check that the current polling place is matching what it should be and that the address is correct. So we'll have 3 different registrars check that. And then, of course, the registration portion of the redistricting has been triple checked by the QC tool that we put in place. So we know that the street segments are correct. So we'll just be triple checking those polling places and then passing those on to the order form through Jarvis. You order directly through Jarvis for No Ink. And then triple checking those proofs as they come back, and then moving forward with those.
Okay, thank you.
Have they resolved all their issues with the addresses that they had on their past mailing, which ended up in all the returned undeliverable mail?
Can you tell me a little bit more about what I'm not sure
When they sent out the precinct cards, when they did statewide precinct cards, the beginning of the cycle, thousands were returned undeliverable because they had some kind of zero problem with the zip codes, and they were returned undeliverable. Several counties, and they wanted the counties to pay for their mistake. Has that been resolved? Because I know a lot of counties told them, no, thank you, we'll do our own printing.
Right. I don't recall that being a particular issue for us in the return mail.
It wasn't because you didn't use them. You did your own bigger card, not their card.
Right. We did still use No Ink though that's who the state uses for all their NCOAs. So they were still mailed countywide last year.
That segment of them
Yes. So I'll make sure that we are triple checking that when we're checking the proofs that come back once we place the order. And I'll make sure to include that in the rep that I deal with No Ink to make sure that they have resolved that.
Okay.
Unless there is anything further for Director Fall on her update, I have no update. Board member comments? Does anyone have any comments? Okay. Mr. White, is there a need to give us any update with respect to, I know there is definitely a need to go into executive session, but is there a need, just for purposes of the motion, is there a need to?
I can give a brief update on a couple of lawsuits that are still bubbling along.
Okay, got it. Well, noting that there is a need to go into executive session, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing any pending litigation, as well as discussing our deliberation upon the periodic evaluation and an HR matter.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending litigation in a HR-related matter. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. For those of you that have not previously joined us, when we move into executive session, we ask that everyone clear the room. We will try to take up our business as expeditiously as possible and invite you back in. So thank you for your attendance today.